Straight pride. Is it a thing on public school campuses? Should it be a thing on public school campuses? We are going to talk about that today on the program. Before I introduce our guest, let me just remind you, go over to ourwatch.com. We'd love to have you subscribe, become a watchman there. So much out there right now. We want to give you the truth. Of course, social media always trying to shut us down. So best way to make sure you get our information, the true information, is going to ourwatch.com, subscribing there. Love to have you there. Also, if you like this video, please share it with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Get the truth into their life. That being said, let me introduce our guest today. Our guest is Mike Yoder. He's a constitutional attorney, and we're going to talk about this issue of straight pride flags and whether or not this should be a thing in public school. Mike, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, glad to have you here. You've got a lot going on, and I've been seeing you all over social media lately. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, I mean, pretty much covered. I'm just a constitutional lawyer. There's more than enough, needless to say, that needs addressed regarding our Constitution. It's pretty tattered right now. Now I'm getting into the school situations a little bit after the egregious incident that happened last week involving my stepdaughter. It's a 12-year-old that was in trouble for allegedly bullying a fur baby. And once I realized this is how far we've gone, I couldn't help but start to get involved with the schools and just straighten this seemingly simple issue out. There's two genders, and I could get censored for saying that on nearly every platform, but I don't know how those two single variables have turned into 80 plus different genders with made up words and different pronouns and litter boxes in high school bathrooms. So here we are.
Yeah. Just briefly, for those that didn't see, because I don't know at this point who hasn't seen that video,
yeah.
But just briefly for the audience, if they haven't seen it, what took place?
Yeah, so essentially, I was just working and I get a phone call, and then our 12-year-old stepdaughter comes home, and she was involved in an incident at school where there's allegedly another girl in her class that identifies as a fur baby, and there was a group chat on their on their phones, a private messaging. They weren't texting in school; it had nothing to do with school. But this other girl, or whatever she may claim to be, I don't know if it's a daily thing or a weekly change. I don't know how often it changes, but was a wolf at the time and would only make animal noises, and it was annoying. So one of the other 12-year-olds said, like, if you don't stop making animal noise, I'm going to call animal control on you. And then they inquired about rabies. It turns out that then they're at school, get pulled out of classroom. The substitute vice principal, so not even someone that's regularly there, goes through their phone, forces them to delete text messages, forces them to leave conversations, and then gaslights them by making it sound like, oh, well, we won't tell your parents. It's a good thing we're not telling your parents. Meanwhile, the vast majority of parents would probably not be too upset based on the way that they handled it. I mean, I was, impressed that they associated rabies, wolves, mammals are the only species that can, or category of animals that can carry rabies. And then calling animal control, I thought was clever and funny. I'm not saying that I'm one to condone bullying, but I think that middle school is, of the highest importance. That's where social boundaries begin to be set. And right. I think it's important that those boundaries are set and you learn what is and is not acceptable. So once I realized that they went through the phone, though, and that Fourth Amendment issue, that's real. Like the first part, it's laughable. But then, like, once you start getting into violating kids' rights, you start taking their phones, you start pressuring them, you start hiding stuff from parents. That's when I get mad, and that's when I'm gonna, that's what triggered this for me to get involved, and start addressing what's going on in schools.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to a certain school board member. I will let him remain nameless right now, which is going to drive my trolls nuts because they're going to want to know who said this. But a school board member I was talking to said we really need to bring back bullying to the schools. And the whole idea is we've turned bullying into something it's not. There's a way of pushing back against things that socially should not be acceptable. And it's a way that children grow. You learn what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that there's a fine line between bullying and harassment. And that line, when I say fine line, I'm not saying small. I'm saying, I guess I should say a bright line. There's a very clear distinction between the difference. Bullying is someone messing around with you that, you're younger, you're an underclassman, whether it's, they're teasing you, they're pushing you into a locker, they, tell you can't make animal noises or you'll call animal control, things like that, that effectively set the standard for what is socially acceptable as you progress through life. People don't learn boundaries or how to conduct themselves accordingly as you go through various phases of life without pushback. If you don't get pushback, if you don't get resistance, you don't run into those walls, there's no way to guide social decorum or conduct or what's expected of you. And that's even just amplified by the fact that we're told we can be whatever we want. We can identify as whoever we want or whatever thing it is that we want, even if it's not a human being. And it turns into this fictitious world that we're told that we have to live by that's fake. It's not real. It's not true. And they wonder why we have no organized society. And I mean, I tell people all the time, you want to see how this turns out? Just go back and read Lord of the Flies again. It's very clear why a civilized society is necessary and there's rules of social construct, and why the legal system exists on top of that, because without law, you can't have a civilized society. There's rules for social order and decorum, and then there's socially accepted practices. And bullying, quote unquote, is the enforcement mechanism for the social practices. And then the law is the mechanism for ensuring that you have a civilized society, which, as we've seen, that's not enforced either anymore.
Right. Well, I think you said that perfectly. And I opened up the program talking about this idea of a straight pride flag, the idea of having straight pride in the public school system. This is an idea that you have, and you're kind of championing this here for the people in America. Talk about your idea. What can we do to push back or to fight against what I call the sexual indoctrination of our children in the public school system?
Well, I mean, the first thing is anyone that doesn't agree that there should be straight pride, I think you should go straight, thank a straight person today, because without that, you wouldn't be born. The second part of that is, why is it that you have a gay pride flag in a classroom and then the LGBTQ agenda is so championed, but anything not only antithetical to that, but even if it's not something that is criticizing the LGBTQ agenda, but meanwhile saying straight pride, that's not in any way addressing the LGBTQ agenda. What it is it's a conversation on the same topic, the underlying topic being sexual orientation, which the Supreme Court as early, and I guess as recently as 2020, has said that the categorical of a protected class based on sex includes both gender identity and sexual orientation. In Bostock was the Supreme Court opinion. So if you are promoting one sexual orientation over another, that's patent viewpoint discrimination. It's unlawful under the First Amendment's viewpoint. You have to give equal, reference to viewpoints. So the problem that a lot of people have been facing is that they see these pride flags in schools and they claim, based on their Christian beliefs, homosexuality is a sin. That's not, it doesn't jive with their religion. The problem is it's sort of apples and oranges there, because you're comparing religion, which is a protected class, different than sex. Religion and sex are not the same class. So you have to compare apples and apples with comparing straight versus LGBTQ. So if you have a rainbow flag, why can't you hang a straight pride flag? Most people don't even know there is a straight pride flag. It's black and white for reference. If you, it's pretty straightforward. It's literally black and white flag. So what I have put together is a packet that not only explains what Title IX is and the rights that it applies and it provides, it also extends. Parents don't know this most of the time, but Title IX applies to parents of students in federally funded schools. And it applies not only just to public schools, but it applies to private universities, colleges that receive federal financial assistance. So it's as simple as, do you get federal money? If so, in exchange for that money, you agree to follow federal anti-discrimination laws and the prohibitions against that. So what I'm saying is, go to school with a equally or similarly sized flag or whatever is displayed in the classroom, whether it be a poster or a 3x5 flag, or maybe it's just even a little postcard size thing, and say, will you hang this up next to the rainbow flag because I want to be represented equally and I'm not. It's a form of expression and I'd like to be treated fairly and in the same way that my counterpart, LGBTQ folks are. If they say no, you give them the handout. In that handout, it explains all the requirements under Title IX. It explains the requirements under the First Amendment, and explains all the requirements as to like viewpoint discrimination. It lays everything out. And if they say no when you come back and ask again the next day, that's intentional discrimination. You've given them notice of their requirements and they're intentionally discriminating against you. It can give rise to punitive damages, and you sue them. And then you get an injunction, and it says you can't hang up a rainbow flag without a straight pride flag right next to it. And if they get upset about that, just write that down, because that's documenting their discriminatory intent and animus towards your viewpoint. And it's sort of a way of stifling this, rainbow road, so to speak, of just being emboldened and shoving this material that is not only violating your rights constitutionally, but also championing an agenda that should not even be in schools to begin with. And people are like, oh, well, if you're complaining about, teaching gay sex in schools, like, well, it's okay to teach about, how babies are made. I'm like, no, if you're in elementary school, I don't think that there is a need to be talking about conception or fornication. I see that both are inappropriate subject matter for kids that are not even in middle school yet. Let kids be kids. Stop pushing this stuff down their throat. And we've seen where it's divulging. It turns into what we're facing right now is the largest pedophilia wave, child pornography, sex trafficking in world history.
Right.
There are more children enslaved now than there were African Americans or blacks during the height of slavery in this country.
Oh, right. I mean,
and they don't see it.
Astronomically more.
It's wrong on so many levels. And this is our most vulnerable sect of the population, and it's our future of our country. Yeah. And we're just letting them be hung out to dry. They don't even know it's happening, but we do. We can stop it, but people don't want to take a stand. So someone has to at this point, and I want to get it gutted from the bottom. I want to stop it from its core. And if we can replicate the same thing across the country, all it takes is one kid in each school district to challenge this and get an injunction and stop them from discriminating. And sure, are they able to keep pushing like the rainbow stuff? Yeah, of course. But you have to hang up a straight pride flag next to every single rainbow. Do you think they're really going to give that base and that platform to the antithesis of what they're trying to say? I'll bet my money that they're not.
Yeah. You know what? I hear what you're saying, and I agree. Something has to be done. The thing that really frustrates me is what you essentially are asking is for a child to make this stand. And it frustrates me that that's where we're at in our society here in America, is we have to ask the children to fight.
Because no one else will.
Right.
It took mama bears were the first ones that actually started fighting, because men would bury their heads in the sands. I don't know where fathers were and dads were. They were too busy watching football or drinking a beer with their friends or playing golf or going to work. No one really cared. Where were the men at during the entirety of the COVID pandemic? Well, wives already have the hardest job raising children. They're at home. They're taking care of the family. And then the person who's tasked with protecting them could care less. They're not politically involved because, it's too politically charged and I don't want to, rough things up with my fantasy football league.
Right.
Well, you're living in a fantasy world within which you also play a fantasy football league, because no one wants to fight and it falls downhill. And that's what the left does very well. They're orchestrated. They fall in line. They're tenacious. They fight and they follow through. On the right, it's all about grandstanding and virtue signaling. I've never seen so much animosity towards one another and just grandstanding on, I can't believe so-and-so said this. Well, yeah, I don't think that that's a good thing to say, but maybe we should figure out what's going on and why they said it instead of just writing them off because you are capitalizing on their error to make yourself feel emboldened. And we don't have a team. There's no playbook. Everyone wants to be more virtuitous than another in the name of God. And I say that sadly because they're not doing it in the name of God. They're trying to tear each other down. There's no cohesiveness.
Right.
And that's why we are where we are. And kids now, the ones that are being subjected to some of the most heinous content imaginable, are now the ones that have to carry the torch because grown men haven't, and mothers and wives have done the most that they could.
Yeah. And we say that you have to have a kid to do this, but the fact is it would be a kid and some very strong parents behind that kid. Because the whole family is going to end up involved in this. And one of the things I've found is whenever somebody makes a stand like this, the left is going to go after everyone in that family. They're going to go after the dad's job, the mom's job. They're going to go after other siblings of that child. I mean, they're wicked and they are tenacious. And what I hear you saying is we've got to do this at every school. So what's your goal in this? Is that your goal, that every single school would have somebody step up, bring a lawsuit against the district?
I mean, that's the easiest way.
Goal.
It takes one kid per school district to simply go in, ask to hang a flag. It doesn't have to be elementary. It can be middle school, high school kids. It takes one kid to walk into school, ask to hang that flag up to the teacher. The teacher says no. Give them the handout, come back the next day, ask them to hang it up again. If they don't do it, let me know and I will sue them. Or whatever lawyer is in your state, I will more than willingly give the materials and resources I have to any lawyer that's willing to do this stuff. Because you're right, they will attack and they will come after stuff, but at the end of the day, what are you on the earth for? And I truly believe that there's two reasons we're here. It's to find your person and find your purpose. Because at the end of the day, your work is not the reason God created you. There's something bigger than that. And no matter what you face, the animosity, the targeting, the attacks you face, if you're doing something right, if you're trying to save children and the future of where this nation could go and like protect the very essence and the most sacred thing that God's ever created on the earth, which is human life, then even if you get attacked, you're not losing anything. You're just championing of the reason God created you. And if you can't reconcile the difference that there's so much more that's important than what you experience on earth and see that you're here to serve a purpose, it's almost like I look at it as like a pregame warm-up before the big show. Like, I'm here to refine myself and get better as a person before I go to heaven. And I want to be able to knock on the door and be humbled when God answers it, not duck my head in shame because I wasted it on my fantasy football league and working 90 hours a week and ignoring my family because I didn't care. Right. And if you can conceptualize that and frame what your purpose is, and also the other second component of that was your person. I truly believe everyone has someone on this earth for them. And you may not find them as early as other people, but I do think that that's true. I mean, I found my wife, and that's why I'm able to keep going through it. I get attacked relentlessly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've had attempts on my life, and I will not stop. I'm not afraid of dying because you can't stop me. And it takes one kid per school, but you can have an impact greater than arguably anything you could otherwise do in your lifetime because it stops hundreds of kids from being exposed to this.
Right. So have you had anybody do this yet?
I have a pair of 8-year-old twins that have gone through with it. I have another 12-year-old that has worn a button camera into classrooms so we get video of it. I've had other people reach out just, behind the scenes expressing interest or questioning, like, what can we do to fight back, people expressing their willingness. But I just got all of the materials together to launch this yesterday. So I'm going to be, putting out those kits. It's almost like an activism kit. And I mean, I'm doing this myself. I had to design everything, put everything together, order everything online. But I'm, pushing the kits out from my website and giving the FAQs, and I'm trying to build out a network of lawyers in every single state. I can either, if it's somewhere that I'm licensed in a bunch of federal courts all over the country. But if it's a state that I'm not, I have lawyers that I can work with. I can refer stuff. I want to hit this overnight and just start slamming schools with injunctions.
Tell me about the kit. What comes in a kit?
I mean, honestly, it's like the well-intended, high IQ, quote unquote, troublemaker kids that are usually the ones that are the most successful with this stuff. It's the kids that understand.
No, the kit.
Oh, the kit. I thought you said the kids.
No.
Oh, I was gonna say no. They're like some of these kids are they're young. Like I had like a kindergartner want to go in and do it. They're like, I want to do it.
Yeah.
No, the kits. So it's essentially just like magnets, stickers, a 3 foot by 5 foot normal sized flag. You have like posters, note cards. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is give you everything. So no matter what's hanging in your kid's classroom, you have something that's the same size or substantially similar. You don't want to see a postcard on the wall and then go in with a 3 foot by 5 foot flag and ask them to hang it up.
Right.
Like, you want it to be as identical in size and features as whatever is currently there. So you have that. Then you have a guide that gives you an overview of here's all the law in various angles, where you have, equal protection, you have First Amendment, you have Title IX, equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment. All of these things explain out the various mechanisms you have in the case law that protects you, and just understanding what your rights are, because you can't enforce your rights if you don't even know them in the first place. So you give this to the teacher. They have everything that they need to know to understand what their requirements are. And if they choose to ignore those requirements after being given notice of it, then you sue. And you seek declaratory relief. You get an injunction under injunctive relief, and then if they intentionally discriminate, like they would be, you can sue for punitive damages and recover, monetary damages out of it. And that's, the money is not even the important part. The important part is stopping them from being able to promote an agenda that you don't agree with, and one that the Supreme Court has made clear. If you're going to promote one viewpoint, then you must take the lashings that come from the criticism resulting from the promotion. You can't force speech, just like you can't silence it. And that's what they're trying to do.
Right. So how do they get these kits?
You can find them on my website. I'm going to be posting it on my social media as well. Probably the easiest thing to do would be just find me on Instagram. It's Yoder_ESQ, YODER_ESQ. I'll have links there, but it's also on my website, yoderesq.com. And I'm still working through getting the pop-up there on the website. But once we get these live, I'm going to be shipping them out, and parents can have standing. Parents have standing too under Title IX, but it's just the only way I see this really breaking every school district down, because it's the same across the board. It's federal law. It's well established. And every law that they rely on for the LGBTQ agenda equally applies to heterosexual and straight kids, because what's the difference? There isn't any. And once they stop being able to pave that rainbow road, then we can start going after the books. Why are you teaching this stuff? Why are you pushing this? And it'll slowly halt the machine to a stop, where we can look back and say, wow, I can't believe we went through a period in time where kids were being exposed to this. And we can get back to them learning about math and science and history. Maybe we don't want them teaching history yet. It's pretty...
Well, true history would be good.
Well, when you find a teacher, educator that, I've even seen people teaching that Lincoln was a Democrat. I've seen that in textbooks. I'm like, they just make stuff up. So maybe we'll leave history off the agenda for elementary school right now. But, nonetheless, focus on school, focus on kids being kids.
Right.
And that's all that I want, is protect them, because what are we fighting for if our future populations are not going to further the interests that this country is founded on? And it's not up to them. They're getting their brains filled with this content. We have to stop it somehow.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're doing is great. I look at what Jesus said to his disciples, and he said that the people of this world find a way to make it happen better than my own children. And that is so true. We a lot of people talk about these issues and how we have to push back against it. We have to do something. They do a lot of talk, but they don't actually find a way to make it happen. You're finding a way to make it happen. I wish you all the best in this. I look forward to having you back on the show, and let's talk about some of the wins you're going to have in this, because I think this is going to be huge. I think that God is going to bless this. And so I'm pronouncing a blessing on you right now as you move forward with this. And like I said, look forward to having you back. So Mike Yoder, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I look forward to it, and come back with some more wins.
All right. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. If you like this video, share it with your friends, your family, your neighbors. They need to hear the truth about what's happening in our culture. Please go to Mike Yoder's website, get one of those kits. If you have a strong, courageous child that wants to go out and make a difference, you and your family can do something great here. So get that kit. We're going to put the way you can get that into the notes of this program, so that we can go right to his website and get those kits. And if you end up doing that, we'd love to talk to you about your experience in that. So God bless you. We'll see you next time right here on Our Watch with Tim Thompson.